Hello, friends. It's Chris Gordon with you for Unsung Heroes for DJB Productions, and I'm really excited today. We've had some time off, but we're back, and we're back with a guest I've been wanting to interview for quite a while. Someone I'm very proud to, consider a friend. The author of Fitness at 40, 50, 60, and Beyond. Not only that, he was the manager of Yngwie Malmsteen and the man responsible for bringing Yngwie Malmsteen back to the world. Please welcome Michael Spitzer.
Hi, glad to be here, Chris.
Hey, thanks for being a part of this. Very much appreciated. There he is, the man himself. So there's a lot I want to talk to you about today. And I'm going to start off basically by, first of all, thanking you because Michael, being a manager for, in the music industry, actually saved me not too long ago. I think it was before quarantine. It was probably about a year ago. And I had gotten an offer to tour Italy. And I called Michael and asked him how, if it was a decent deal or not. And, he graciously took his time to, look over the details and told me, "Don't do it, dude. Don't do it." And I'm glad he said that.
Yeah.
You saved me a lot of money and a lot of heartache. So I deeply appreciate that. But welcome to the show, Michael. Thank you so much for doing this. And so you're currently in South Florida. And just give us a little bit about you in terms of your thing. Obviously you've got this book. Hopefully we're going to bring this up on screen. This is a great book. And I want to talk about this book because there it is. Fitness at 40, 50, 60, and Beyond. Now, this book was important to me because you were very gracious and sent this book to me. And if anyone knows me from 3 years ago, I was 360 pounds. And this book transformed me. And I can't thank Michael enough for that. So there it is. That's the book available. It's available on Amazon, as a matter of fact. We were talking about Amazon earlier. So let's start with that. Let's talk about your pursuit with fitness and how it became a part of your life.
Well, I mean, basically, like a lot of people my age, I'm in my late 50s. The movie Pumping Iron came out in the 70s with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Lou Ferrigno, and that movie really launched the whole fitness craze in America. I mean, back then gyms were filled with teen guys all trying to look like Hercules or whatever, and it was popular. Everybody wanted to have that Steve Reeves classic Hercules or Arnold look or whatever. So that was where I first got into it. But as the years went by, of course, I had to go to college and I had to work my way through college. So doing classes and 36 hours a week, not a lot of time for doing the fitness thing. And then after college, I started working. And soon after I started working, I actually got into starting my own business. And typical business startup, it took like 2 years of working 7 days a week, 15 hours a day just to get the business off the ground. Just
wow.
Startup. That's
common. And what was this business? What was your first business?
My degree was actually in chemistry, so it was environmental chemistry, and that's basically, for people that don't know, this is the field where, if you think about the drinking water you get out of your tap, well, how do you know that drinking water is safe to drink? It has to be tested before the water plants send it down the distribution lines.
Okay.
Or if you hear about a truck spilling on the interstate and diesel fuel is everywhere and it has to be cleaned up, that's environmental contamination. Or Love Canal back in whenever that was, the 70s, or anytime there's hazardous waste cleanups, all that soil or water has to be tested. And so that was environmental chemistry. And also plays into climate change and all that. But that was my major in college. And starting that business, you were eating on the run, or you were taking clients out for lunch. So I ballooned up to like 236 while I owned my business and looked like Fred Flintstone, you know, and that's the way to say you look like Fred Flintstone. And but after we sold the business, I said, hey, I forget what age I was. I think we sold the business. I was like 37 or something, 38.
And how long had you had it before you sold it?
I think we were in business about 8 years, and we were lucky and very successful. I mean, we tried to do things a little different than other environmental laboratories. So for the time we opened, we were doing things that had never been done in this industry before. And like I said, when I first moved to Florida, I was working for another environmental lab that had been around for 30 years. Okay. What really happened there was like you go into the bosses and say, hey, I think I have this better idea how we could do things. And they say, hey, you know, you're the new hire, get back on the bench, go do your tests. We know what we're doing. We've been in business for 30 years.
Oh, wow.
But I kept in the back of my mind all these ideas that I thought could make the business better. And, you know, not to bore you with chemistry or any of the viewers, but there's some business lessons to be learned here. They ran this chemistry company pretty much the same way a college professor, if you can imagine, would run a company, from a very academic and scholarly way, where we came in and said, hey, if you need samples tested, we're not going to make you bring them to our lab. We will have a fleet of trucks that go out and pick them up. And, you know, laboratory equipment, and most of this equipment is the same kind of stuff you'd see on forensics files or whatever, where, you know, it's all the gas chromatographs and, you know, Fourier transform, infrared spectrometers, and all this kind of high-tech science stuff.
Wow.
You know, they would treat it like a research lab, even though it was a company. And so they would only operate Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and then weekends they would shut down. Well, we wouldn't. We said, hey, we pay for this expensive equipment. Let's run it around the clock. So we were the first lab to have like evening shifts and weekend shifts and run it like a production facility. Long story short was within 7 years, we had put out of business many of the labs, including the one I used to work for, that had been around for 30 years, and we were the largest in the state of Florida. So that's how that went. But jumping ahead, we were approached by a company out of Great Britain that was expanding in the United States, and they made an offer to buy us. And you know the old rule of thumb, whether you're in sports or whatever, you want to go out on top.
Yeah.
You know, nothing lasts forever. So my partner and I looked at each other and said, hey, we're the largest in the state of Florida. And we're no famous people. I mean, you came from Kentucky. I was some guy from Virginia. We've done quite well for ourselves. Let's not push our luck. This is probably the time to sell is when you're on top. And they bought us and acquired us. So that was the time when I looked at myself and said, hey, now I need to do something. We had success in business, but hell, I might not live to see 45 the way I'm going with,
right. Well, because you're working so hard at your business.
Yeah, you're there to get it started off the ground with almost no capital. It was just, like I said, you were there 7 days a week, 15 hours a day. And you just lived and breathed that place for years.
Wow.
And you just don't take care of yourself when you're doing that.
Right. Yeah.
So that's when I just said, hey, that's it. Let me dust off all the old rules about old school training and fitness and get myself back in shape. And in about 2 years or so, I was back in shape. And that brings to fast forward you about the book. What happened really, I never had intentions to write a book. I never did. Never thought about it. But at the gym that I was going to, a lot of people would keep coming up to me and say, hey, I know you're 40 because this is a couple of years. I wrote the book much later than when I sold the company. I sold the company about 38. It took me about 2 or 3 years to get myself back in shape. And then a couple of years passed. But when I was like close to 50, people were coming to me in the gym and saying, hey, Mike, what do you do? I mean, you're almost 50 and you seem to be in good shape. And I've been paying this trainer, hundreds of dollars, and I look the same as I did now 2 years ago. I'm not making any improvement. So I'd give them some tips, and they'd come back like 6 months later and say, man, that really worked. And I said, well, I'm glad it worked for you. They said, no, man, this really worked. You need to write a book. And I said, well, thanks a lot. But the last thing the world needs is another damn book about fitness.
Okay. But I have to ask this question because leading up to the book. So you went to the gym. Okay. So you had this company, you sell this company, and it affords you this opportunity to reinvent yourself physically. Did you already have an idea of how it worked, or was this a natural thing? Like because you just said people were coming up to you going, Michael, I'm paying this guy hundreds of dollars an hour and I'm not getting results. I'm not getting gains. I'm not getting this stuff. But you were, and you weren't using a personal trainer. Like,
Right.
was this something that is it, and does this come from your education as a chemist? Were you
Well, okay.
combining those two?
Yeah, it's a couple of things. One is, like I said, I was interested when I was younger. So I had
Okay.
already studied all the principles of Bob Hoffman and Joe Weider and all those fitness guys that
Okay.
make bodybuilding world. So I already knew those principles. But also, I was not originally going to be a chemist. I was going to be a doctor. That was my goal.
Oh,
But like
wow.
I said, I had to work my way through college. So, I was sitting there taking college classes and then working 36 hours a week in restaurants or in poultry plants or whatever to do tuition. And I could realize by the junior year of my college life, I said, I'm not going to be able to pull off medical school doing this.
Wow.
It's going to be too expensive. And it was harder to get loans and stuff back 35, 40 years ago compared to now.
Okay.
The student loan process. So that's when I made the decision, you know what? Yes, but I mean, I had done pre-med. I was preparing. I was doing pre-med. I was working on the cadavers, for pre-med. I was doing all that, going down the road to being a doctor. But I realized I'm not going to be able to work full-time and do medical school and pull that off. It's not going to happen. So at that time, I said, all right, I want to still do something scientific. What's out there? Well, that just happened to be in the early 1980s. Environmental pollution was a major thing. The Environmental Protection Agency had only been invented or started by Richard Nixon 10 years earlier in 1974. The EPA is really not that old. So that was a big thing launching in the 80s was environmental cleanup. So I said, well, I can apply my degree there.
Okay.
So those two things, pre-med plus the knowing the fitness stuff, most of the scientific knowledge was there. And I'm going to tell you, I'll just tell you it straight up. Here's another thing. Every day you'll see it on the news or on the internet, people are coming up with this new diet craze or this new product. Right. But here's the harsh reality. People have to market it that way so they can make money and sell something. But the reality is, biologically, we really have not evolved much in a couple of thousand years. So the same fitness things that made Jack LaLanne or Frank Zane or
Jack LaLanne
or Lou Ferrigno fit 40 years ago still works today. There's not really anything revolutionary and new being done. But like I said, new companies come out, they got to figure a way to sell something. So they're always selling you this new magical solution, and there aren't really. There's no magical solution.
It doesn't exist, right? It's the same as it always was.
Now, the old school stuff that worked 40 years ago is what still works reliably and solid today. It's like the wheel. We're much more evolved than we were in the Roman Empire days, but don't you still put wheels on a vehicle to make it roll?
Right.
I mean, we haven't improved the wheel,
Right. Well, we haven't improved, exactly. We haven't improved the wheel. And then that's what led you to, so you were taking from that time.
So I was just doing it for myself.
You were doing it for yourself. And you had this, this kind of wave of people coming to you going, so then you.
One person, at first it was one, and then another person would come up and said, hey, Susan over there or John over there said, you helped them out. What kind of things did you tell them? And I'd give them the same basic idea. And they'd come back and say, man, you ought to write a book. So honestly, after I heard this about 30 or 40 times, and I was telling my wife, she says, hey, dumbass, maybe the man upstairs sends you a message that you should write a book.
Write a book. That's great.
And in today's world, with so much stuff free on the YouTube and whatever, I was hesitant to do it because I didn't think, does anybody really going to care about a book? But then I started thinking about it more and I realized, well, the book is tailored for older people. Now, don't get me wrong, the advice in the book can apply to people of any age, but there's a lot of chapters and target subjects about specific to aging in there. And I know an older crowd, is not quite as receptive to social media and internet as younger people. If you look at book sales in general, older people still tend to like physical books in their hand. Even though they may use internet, they still prefer.
I'm still an avid book reader.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the only, look, I'll be honest with you. I'm telling you, Michael, I never thought I would, but I you know,
Yeah.
I'm the last in my family to wear glasses, but
Right.
it's because I love to read. I love reading. I love books.
Oh,
I love being able to
Zepp's a
just,
great guy.
go over to the couch and just, reading a book. I
Yeah,
don't want to
I'm-
look at a bright light in my face. I want to
Mhm.
read a book. So it's an amazing book. Uh, it's, it's detailed. It flows very nicely, and it's great because I still consider it a reference book. I still reference it.
Well, I
You
was
know,
lucky. I mean, it was no New York Times bestseller, but it did win 2 awards.
yeah. And I mean, just look at you on the cover. That's
In all
ridiculous.
fairness, I was only 48 then. I'm 58 now, so hey.
That was awesome.